Aska. Welcome to this episode of Business Unzipped. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. And thank you for joining me today. Where are you located?
So I'm at home. So yeah, just having a nice quiet one and yeah, looking
Nice.
forward to having a chat about all things career based, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And we originally connected on LinkedIn, and your profile stood out because you seem to have a whole host of things that you've sort of explored throughout your career. And then it's landed you today. So you're medical science operations lead and you're also a transformational coach practitioner. So tell me a bit about sort of how you got to where you are today, your sort of journey.
Yeah, so I think it's often a kind of fun talking point because it's been a very non-linear and in many ways very accidental career path. Definitely not what I had planned. I think from a young age, essentially, a lot of people used to kind of comment on how psychologically minded I was. And I was always really curious about how people behaved, interacted, how we were the way we are, I guess. And I never really planned or expected to formalize that in any way. So when I got to sixth form college, there was an opportunity to study psychology, and I thought, well, that would be quite interesting. But again, no plans to take it anywhere. But I did really enjoy it. I had the most wonderful teacher, and he then became my mentor in my final year of sixth form before going to university. So I was really blessed actually to have such an incredible teacher and mentor, and learning psychology from him was amazing. But I have to say, at heart of it, my passion at the time was fashion, and I had my heart completely set on eventually becoming a fashion designer. And so I had this real kind of toss up of, do I pursue the arts or do I pursue academia? And so simultaneously, I was applying for both actually at university. And then after kind of wrestling with it for weeks, months, I don't even know how long it was at this point, I just landed on actually, let's go do psychology, because that felt like the right choice, actually, at least for now. And who knows, maybe in the future I'd circle back to the arts. But I knew that psychology was a very popular subject. I knew that there are a lot of people studying it. And so I kept saying to myself, how am I going to get my edge? And so I found a course that enabled you to have a year in industry as part of your degree. So I did an applied program. And I was particularly drawn to my university because it offered placements in prison settings. And I'd always had a fascination with criminal psychology, criminology, forensic sort of behavior. And I just thought that's perfect. Let me go explore that at least and see what it's like. And then I arrived at university and the placement was taken away. So
Oh
the
no.
that opportunity was no longer there. And I sort of panicked and thought, well, what do I do now? I've got this year in industry. Where am I going to go? And having looked at the options, healthcare kind of just felt like the right fit, actually. You know, going and exploring the healthcare arena, it had been recommended. So many people thought it was the right fit for me. And so, in a way, I kind of caved at that point and thought, okay, let's give it a go and see what happens. So I had three interviews lined up, went for my first interview, great, thought it was the perfect fit, but I wasn't quite sure about, sort of just abandoning the other two. So I thought, let me just at least go to the next one. And the next one was in London. And of all the places, I always said growing up, never going to live in London, never going to work in London, just no London for me ever. Um, I went to the interview and it just somehow felt like home. Instantly, everyone felt really warm. It just felt like the right place to be. And I couldn't get over that just instinctive feeling that this is where I should be for my placement. So I just said yes and took the job. And before I knew it, I'd spent over a decade in London. So I think definitely lesson learned, never say never. And throughout my career, it's kind of just been a case of seeing where my career takes me, seeing the opportunities that arise, and making the most of it and being open to whatever the future might bring. So, a very happy accident, and it's been incredibly fulfilling. So, I have to say, now looking back on it, I wouldn't change it for the world.
That's so funny how these things sort of happen, and in the moment it feels catastrophic, but actually the outcome can sometimes be a bit better than what we anticipated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I've learnt so much, so I'm really grateful. And also, I think it is with thanks to a lot of people who gave me a shot. If you don't have people willing to back you and willing to give you those opportunities, then these things don't happen. So, yeah, I feel very fortunate to have been in that position.
Oh, do you know what? I would have loved to have gone into fashion too, but I can't even sew on a button. I have all of the ideas in my head, like I know exactly what I want. And when I go shopping, I have like what I want in my head and I can never find it. And everyone says like you need to learn how to make your own clothes, but I'm telling you now that is not one of my skills. So kudos to anyone that knows how to sew. Is
Well,
yeah,
that or find a great seamstress. I always make
true.
sure I know a good seamstress wherever I
Mm,
live, because then if I don't have time to make my vision come to life, I can at least know where to take that vision and make it a reality.
so true. That's what I need in my life. So do you think you would ever go back and try and revisit that chapter that closed in terms of the prisons and criminology and all of that? Or is that sort of long gone and you found a new pathway?
I think, honestly speaking, I still don't really necessarily know where the future is going to take me. There's still so much of my career to be had, and that's a really exciting thing. So, yeah, I suppose lesson learned, never say never. Anything's a possibility. Um, but I do feel really happy at the moment in having landed in the healthcare arena, operations. I really have such a passion for well-being and making sure that people are thriving. So yeah, I think as long as I suppose those key values and the things that are important to me in the way that I work and what I do and what it's for are there, then I probably am not necessarily too fixed in what that exact job looks like.
What a healthy way to look at life. That's so refreshing. You're like, what will be, will be. I'm going with it as long
Not
as it
always
aligns to
praised.
your values. I think that is amazing. That is so cool. And so going down less of the traditional sort of academic route and going through your sort of lived experiences through all of the work placements that you've had, what sort of lessons do you think that they've taught you versus an academic route?
Yeah, I think that there's probably a list as long as my arm with that one. So I have tried to kind of think this through over the years, and it's a constant reflection point, to be honest. But I do think there are probably a few main ones that stand out. Certainly, one of the challenges that has kind of overarched my career. There was a significant chapter where there was a lot of pressure from lots of different angles to go back to university or to go get more pieces of paper against my name in some shape or form. And at one point, it was so intense that I was essentially being told that my career would not go anywhere unless I went and did that. And I felt really skeptical, but also kind of disheartened by this. And I thought, well, surely experience has to count for something. Um, and I was really lucky. I actually I got introduced to someone who really busted that myth once and for all and said, no, absolutely, you don't have to go and get lots and lots of qualifications. There will be times where that's important, and there are certainly professions or avenues where that's required. And so it's not a case, of course, you can do absolutely anything without going and getting the right trainings. But there is a lot that can be done through learnt experience and your own know-how that you acquire over time. And so I suppose definitely what's come through for me is that actually, if you have a proven track record in the workplace, that in itself makes an impression, and that is credibility as to what you can do and how well you can do it. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't know how to apply it, you can fall at the first hurdle. So certainly for me, I've always set myself regular goals on, thinking about how can I make my mark? How can I do something in my current role, in my current workplace that will be meaningful to elevate both the service, the company, the business that I work for, but also how do I elevate myself in that process? How can I learn something and keep growing and moving forward, and enhancing my skill set? And I think I've always been determined to keep thinking, what if, what if? So I know I certainly have been criticized at times of being too blue skies thinking. But I am definitely an ideas person. I do think about, that what can be in the art of the possible if we just push those boundaries a little bit more. And I think that's what's led to me being where I am today in many ways. I think the second thing is, and funnily enough, a colleague actually made this comment to me the other day, but be a sponge. I think if you're open and you're ready to soak up information, knowledge, skills from everyone around you, all the different meetings you sit in, all of the notes you might see, anything that you're exposed to, you're inevitably going to acquire more and be able to apply that yourself in the future. And of course, there is a limit to how much you can take in at any one time. We can't endlessly soak up unlimited information, but pick and choose what you feel really resonates and feels like you as a professional. And I think that's really helped me as well to learn through experience rather than taking a kind of traditional route. And then I think the final thing, which I sort of look at it as a bit of a double-edged sword, to be honest, but I do think adversity is an opportunity at the heart of it. It
Mhm.
sounds really cheesy, and I totally hear that. But I have to say, I think almost every role I've had now, there's been some kind of significant event or challenge that's been quite extraordinary, actually, very exceptional in that thing happening. Um, and so, whether it's myself as an individual or us as a team, we've had to work through that. And certainly, if you can see those moments as opportunities, if you can look for the silver lining or the positive in it, what can come out of it that's good? I think there is huge growth and huge momentum you can take with you from that. And I think it's definitely made me more resilient as well. Businesses are inevitably going to go through change. They're going to go through tough times. And so it's important to challenge your own thinking and to avoid that overwhelm that can easily kick in. And two things in relation to that I think I highly recommend if anyone hasn't come across them is firstly solution focused thinking, or SFT, which I have to say completely blew my mind when I first started working therapeutically, but it has really changed the way I think about problems and problem solving. And then the other thing is a book called Who Moved My Cheese, which once you've read it, you can never forget it. It's like the ultimate guide to navigating change, but also understanding your role in it and whether you're helping yourself or hindering yourself. So I always kind of circle back to that in moments of difficulty and try and look for some clues as to how I can do better and get through it constructively.
Yeah, that really resonates because actually, the saying is we don't actually learn a lot from success. We all our learnings come from where we think that we failed. And I think that is absolutely right. And going back to the education part, I found myself in a similar position to you, and I left my original placement at university and I ended up going through an apprenticeship route and got my degree through that. And I am such an advocate for apprenticeships because you get the experience that is missing with a traditional university placement, and you learn so much more and you are able to apply what you're learning throughout. And yeah, I'm such an advocate for apprenticeships for that very reason. I think just getting the piece of paper on its own is not going to get you that life experience that you need when you're in the workplace. It is so different doing it theoretically to doing it practically. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
remember it being a
completely
real frustration actually in my final year of university because I think having gone out into the working world and starting to see how does the theory of what you're learning in the classroom apply in real life. And honestly, it's a completely different ball game. They're not the same at
agree.
all. And so, yes, it's great to have the theory, it's great to have the knowledge. But
Mm.
again, it's if you don't understand the realities of your environment and how to work in that environment, it all falls short actually. And I think I just got so frustrated. I remember at one point in my final year standing up in the seminar and I went, that's not how it is. I was just so annoyed because I thought you're teaching us and I appreciate the knowledge, but can we also have a bit of a reality check on what this actually means when we go out those doors and have to
Yeah.
do what we need to do day to day?
Yeah, I think, and fundamentally, I think it's the people element that might be missing. The fact that we're dealing with so many different types of people, and they're neither predictable nor controllable, and we don't learn that necessarily throughout our education. It's a jungle.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to someone who's sort of doubting their worth because they maybe don't have the right credentials, but they still want to sort of navigate their career?
I mean, I think it's a really tricky one because I think definitely everyone's career is a personal journey, it's a personal experience. And um, I think we also have to very much acknowledge that, our careers do not happen in isolation. We have a whole life that goes on that is intertwined with it, and they have, intertwining effects on each other. So, it does change things in that regard for each person. I suppose when we think about that word unconventional, I really noticed that certainly for me, a lot of words like haphazard, unfocused, nonsensical kind of come to mind. And the very fact that even that word has an the UN at the start of it kind of suggests that there's something wrong or missing. But actually, it's not the case. And I've moved between roles, between specialties. I've done clinical versus non-clinical. I've done community, hospital, then gone into more. Sorry.
That's okay. We've got an additional guest with us.
I know.
Aska's little doggy.
Yes, take two then. But yeah, I think the fact that it has the UN in front of it can often suggest that something is missing or wrong, and it's just not the case. So I think for myself, having moved across lots of different areas, I've worked in different specialties, different settings, and navigated going from kind of frontline to managerial to more strategic and business roles. I think I totally appreciate it can look like a bit of a pick and mix, but I think at the same time, I really take pride in that my career path has been a lot about saying yes to opportunities and challenging myself, building, I suppose what I kind of refer to as like a library of experience and capabilities. And whilst I acknowledge, yes, it is unconventional, I'm proud of it because it's not an easy thing to do. You have to really tap into those transferable skills. You have to be adaptable. You have to learn new environments, new language sets. I mean, it's like speaking a different language every time you move to a different specialty in healthcare.
Particularly with the
I'm really,
acronyms, right?
oh, yes, exactly. All the specialty terms, and there's a different way of referring to even, certain meetings have a different name. And I think, being able to move around and flex like that is a really powerful thing, actually. So I'm really proud of it. And I also really hope that then from me doing that and following an unconventional path and showing that you can be really successful by doing that, you can have a really incredible career. I hope that it shows that others can do that too. And all that you really have to do is just trust yourself and go for it. Just give yourself that chance. but I totally acknowledge, I think it is important still to have that thread in your career. And I do think when I look at my career, there is a clear kind of umbrella of healthcare, service, bringing out the best in others. There's also been, a really kind of clear trajectory of working frontline, honing in on those expertise, potentially trying something a little bit different from frontline healthcare, but still in that arena, going into management, and then gradually stepping it into, partnership, strategy, business management. So there is a very clear trajectory there, even if on my CV, it might look a bit nonsensical. And I don't mind that at all. So I suppose I also think kind of for anyone who might be feeling like they're in that same position, I think simple questions, just asking yourself, what do I get from my current role? Or what do I really like? Or what have I not liked about my jobs to date? What makes me proud? Kind of, I think honing in on those core truths of how you experience your work. And I think sometimes that can help you find that thread or understand the purpose or the drive that is pushing you through from job to job, even if on paper that might not quite look like a logical path.
I mean, it's never linear though, is it? Let's face it, even in the most logical path, it's still a bit of a zigzag. I think what's coming across is your confidence. Is that a learned behavior or have you always had it? And does that help?
Definitely not. No. I mean, I think at the, certainly at the beginning of my career, I felt so like the newbie, the baby of the team, constantly doubting myself, constantly worrying if I was doing it right or not. And I do think it's taken a lot of time for me to feel comfortable and confident as a professional. Um, Bizarrely, one of the things that actually made me realize it is because of being mixed heritage, I've grown up between Japan and England. And having now built my career in the UK, it's made it a lot more difficult, I have to say, to kind of go back and forth. And I've found it challenging to have the money, but also the
Mm.
time to step away and do those trips. So there was a time, my last trip, there was actually a 7 year gap between the previous trip and then going again. And I hadn't really thought that much had changed for me as an individual, that I was still kind of the same Aska. But, going there in my early 20s and then going there as a 30-year-old, um, I really felt it. It was the most bizarre thing, but somehow being in a different country and seeing yourself there years later, I could sense that I was a more confident person. Even though I was there in a personal capacity, I did professionally feel confident somehow. And talking to friends about my work and explaining what I do and what my career's been like over the recent years, it was really rewarding actually to kind of have that moment to acknowledge and reflect back. So I suppose now certainly I look back on, that version of me at the start and I just kind of want to say to it, it's okay. It will all work out. Um, but I do think it takes time and it's not been the easiest journey and it has definitely taken a few kind of, like you say, zigzags, ups and downs, to get there. So yeah, I'm glad that it's there now, but it also doesn't mean that it's there all the time either.
Absolutely. Yeah, it ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
I think when we evolve as an individual, because it's so incremental, we sometimes don't see it. So maybe it was useful for you to have that prolonged period, and then you could then really look back and go, wow, I really have grown and evolved over the years.
Mm,
I have a
yeah.
real issue with people putting imposter syndrome on others. And when someone's like, oh, don't you get imposter syndrome? Or do you ever feel like, and it's like, well, no, that's not my insecurity. So it's really refreshing to hear someone actually speak with conviction and go, yeah, no, I actually do know what I'm talking about. I've worked hard to get where I am, and that there isn't any of that. I think we need more of that. It shouldn't even be a thing that's put in people's heads. So it's really, really lovely to hear. Um, and clearly you're passionate about not only your own development, but also helping others, and that's coming through as well. Is that why you went into coaching?
I think there was something that really frustrated me when I worked therapeutically, to be honest with you. Because I mean, I did a brief uh, period of working in particular with young adults. Um, and I was meeting, it was a lot of young men actually, and I was meeting them really where they were at an all-time low. They were mentally very unwell. It kind of felt like their future just wasn't there in the way that it should be. And that was really hard to see, but also I felt really disappointed getting to know them and hearing their history and even sort of where they were maybe a few years before I'd met them. I just kept thinking, why wasn't someone there sooner? And actually, if someone had been able to do something sooner or work with you, it would have been more like touch. Perhaps things wouldn't have spiraled in the same way that they have to get to where we are now. And I mean, all of this is a hypothetical, no one can know for sure. But I just kept asking myself, what else is there? What else could be done to enable people to be at their best before things start to take a turn? And I honestly didn't know what the answer was. I thought it was early psychological intervention. And then I think having kind of wrestled with it for a few years, I started speaking to a colleague about it, and they were a qualified coach. And it was really interesting actually to hear them talk about coaching and what they felt it could do for people. Um, and they were very therapeutically minded as well. So it didn't feel like a sort of totally coaching biased conversation. It felt really balanced. So I started looking into it and I found an amazing place to train with. And it just answered all of those questions that I had. And having then experienced coaching as well as part of the training, I could really see that was the thing that I had been wondering about. And so through my work coaching people, I think it has been so rewarding because there are so many of us who reach a crossroads. We reach a moment where we can feel there's that wobble coming. And we know that we maybe just need a reassuring, space to talk through that, just bounce some ideas across or figure out what is the best next step given the situation. Um, and before things start to spiral, before you start to see disaster strike, being able to take control of that situation and do something constructive and look after yourself as well. It's just been amazing to kind of be part of that with people time and time again. Um, and every single coaching experience has been different because, of course, everyone is different.
Mm,
So I love the unpredictability and I particularly love the creativity with coaching. There's so much freedom as a qualified coach to work in a way that is truly fit for the person in front of you. There's, no regimented, you must do it this way, you must follow a manual, or you must do, these 6 steps. And that feels really reflective of who we are as humans. So I
mm,
really appreciate that way of working as well.
yeah. And what do you mean by the term therapeutically minded?
Um, Trying to think what context did I say it in?
in terms of how you coach and how you work.
Yeah, so I think it's weaving in those therapeutic principles. So, creating safety, creating strong, trusting relationships, respecting boundaries. I think also being really aware of that line in terms of, there is absolutely an arena for coaching, and then there is an arena for psychological intervention, and those two shouldn't be tangled.
Yeah.
So being therapeutically minded in that you know where that line is, or where perhaps it's going beyond the remit of coaching. And so it's not necessarily for you as a coach anymore to support this individual. I think that is really important, because otherwise, you can get yourself tangled in knots as a coach, um, trying to help when it's simply not in your toolbox. And it also can do harm to that person. So I think having those therapeutic principles and being mindful of therapeutic practice is really useful. But I think it's definitely a boundary that you have to respect as well in terms of how far you go with implementing that.
Yeah. And I like how flexible you are with your coaching as well. So you're basically saying you're willing to meet that person where they're at and work with them. And that's exactly what people need when they're looking for a coach. It can't just be a one size fits all, rinse and repeat. You've got to suit the needs of the client. So that's great.
And it is
So
trial and
what?
error. I've had so many times where I try something with a client and they've gone, Aska, I'm sorry, that really just did not land. Like that was
Yeah.
not good. I'm like, okay, well, we know that doesn't work. We'll try something else then. But it is that really lovely thing about working together as two people. So yeah, very grateful that I've had clients who are incredibly honest and open with me about when things are not suiting them as well.
Yeah. So without wanting to sort of bag some free coaching advice for our listeners, but what kind of advice would you give someone that's just sort of feeling stuck, essentially? And what steps can they
Yeah,
take to sort of begin to unload that?
I think so. Ultimately, I am a big believer in conversations. Um, I think having a conversation with someone else, having a conversation with yourself, um, thinking about, is there someone that you look up to? Is there someone who's in a position to advise or provide that guidance that you want or need? But also being boundaried about whether it is that you want someone to listen and support you with working through something and feeling heard, or is it that you want that advice? Because I think we all have advice monsters in us, and I certainly can't take credit for that term. But it's important to tame the advice monster if someone is not after that. So I think being clear, what do you want from that person as well in that conversation? But as I say, I think it's also that conversation with yourself. What is that stuck feeling? Is it physical? Is it a thought that's going around in your head? Um, and also, have you ever had it before? Because if you've had it before, there may be clues about how you worked through that, whether it worked or it didn't work, in how you can now navigate this current situation in the best way possible for yourself. So, yeah, ultimately, I think there is so much power in having an open, honest, and considered conversation. Um, Conversations have the power to change everything, I think.
I couldn't agree more. Hence me doing the podcast because I just love talking to new people and getting that advice. And yeah, I think that is absolutely spot on. But have the conversations with the right people.
Mm,
And you
absolutely.
can choose whether you take their advice or not. You can easily throw it away if it does not serve you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think certainly that's been a real challenge sometimes is, a lot of people will give you advice with the best of intentions, but it doesn't always fit and it doesn't mean you have to act on it either. Um, I definitely think early on in my career, that was not something that I properly understood. And so
Yeah.
I just took it all and was like, I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to make sure I action this and behave in this way. And now I think there's a much clearer sense of me as a professional. And so it does get easier with time to hear advice and make an informed decision on whether that is the right fit for you or not.
Yeah, my dear friend Susie Ramroop, she's a great speaker and she talks about how particularly when women are early on in their careers, we are grateful for any opportunity and we allow other people to create our pathways for us because we don't know any different. So if someone says, "Oh, you should go for that promotion," we're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, I should do that," rather than actually stopping and thinking, well, I could, but is that actually where I want to go? Is that what I want to do? But we're just so grateful for any opportunity that we actually let other people create our pathways for us. So, I mean, yeah, you just reiterated that, which is cool.
I think it is a really hard thing to navigate though, because you can have all those thoughts in your head of, or am I potentially missing out on something that is really important? Or I think for me, I always think about that sliding doors moment. It's the kind of, well, if I take this route, is that going to take me to where I want to be long term? Or what if I don't do that? You kind of, and you can't necessarily do everything. So you do have to make a choice and hope that that leads to where you want to go. But it can be really tricky because you just don't know sometimes. So you have to put your faith in your decision. I think certainly listening to my gut more has been very valuable in recent years.
So, what's next for you?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Um, I don't know. Um, I think my main thing that I always come back to is when I come home, do I feel like A, have I worked hard? Have I earned my living? I do have quite a strong sense of I must earn my salary. Not sure where that comes from. Um, But I think also feeling proud of what I do is really important to me. So for the longest time, as long as I can come home and I can say to myself, I'm proud of the work that I've done. I'm proud of what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and where I'm going for the however into the future I can see for myself, then we're good. And definitely what has got me here is consistently showing up, consistently putting in the effort and the time, and equally looking after myself is key. But I think, yeah, the hard work pays off. So I don't think there's necessarily harm in not knowing. It's quite exciting to just see what comes next and be ready and open to explore that.
Yeah, and I like what you said at the beginning as well, which is as long as it aligns with your purpose and your values, then you're happy where it
Yeah,
takes you, which is really cool.
yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much, Aska. It's been really interesting hearing about your career and your coaching methodology and everything that you've got going on and the appearance from your little doggy halfway through. Like, so cute. That
Now
is
just
real
fast
life.
asleep. So there we go.
Well, that's it. She's made her appearance and now it's off to bed again. Thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for having me. It's been great fun.